and we will go ahead and push this live. And I'm going to send you guys into the background, Diane and Raina. Good morning. Good morning. All right. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Q2, but kind of in Q3, DBE Task Force Workshop. I'll give everyone a few minutes to get logged in. I know we're right at 9 o'clock. So thank you all for joining. If you'd like to get a moment of virtual networking in, please do use the chat. So that should be enabled for everyone. If you'd like to say good morning, do make sure to change that little drop down. If you'd like to change it to everyone, so you can introduce yourself and say good morning. I think it's always quite fun to see everybody log in and say good morning to everybody, see who else is here. Again, get that virtual networking in as best we can. Good morning. Good morning. Reginald, good to see you. Good job with dropping in all your information too. I'm impressed. I like that. Perfect. Stephanie with Valley Metro, good morning. All right, welcome, welcome. We will go ahead and get started. This is a very, very interesting topic to everyone. A couple housekeeping notes. This is being recorded. So we had a ton of registrations with knowing that these are being recorded, our webinars are recorded. The links to the recording will be sent out. We will send out every material. So all the slide decks, everything will be sent out to everyone. They're super useful. I did get a sneak peek at them already. They have lots of links, very, very useful for people who want to research more on their own. But overall, this topic is very timely. Everyone seems very interested in that. And then the other thing is the chat kind of rolls, right? Like that's kind of the ongoing, the chat, right? If you have a specific question to the panel, please do use the Q&A. So that is very different than the chat. The Q&A kind of holds it for us, almost like puts a pin in it, and lets the panelists and the moderator know like, hey, there's a question. So if we know the question will be answered in a moment, or if it's something we need to come back to, that's a lot better place. So different pieces of functionality in the Zoom webinar portal. But again, thank you so much for coming and for making time. This is a great topic. So my name is Rebecca Morris. I am your consultant, your ADOT consultant on the DBE task force, event planning and whatnot. And then I'd like to introduce and invite you to turn your camera on Alexa Romay, DBE specialist with ADOT DBE Supportive Services. Alexa, come on stage, if you will. Perfect.
Hi, everyone.
All right, and I would like you to take it away. We do just have just one big topic. All we want to talk about is updates and what's new regarding the USDOT, DBE, and ACDBE final rule. So Alexa, please do take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Today we have a good, or I think, interesting topic. And we have our amazing DBE certification team that will be helping us answer some of the most common questions they have been receiving in their inbox from DBEs. So without further ado, let me introduce. All right. And then I will invite Miss Diane Neidick. She is our DBE certification manager, and Reina Valenzuela, our DBE certification specialist. You guys can come on camera, and then I will go in the background. Perfect. Hi, Diane.
Thank you so much, Alexa and Rebecca, and welcome to everyone. It's great to see so many people getting up to speed on the DBE certification final rule. I'm sure many of you were present at our part 1 of this. Today will be a deeper dive with more detail. We have collected some of the questions we've been receiving from our formerly known as applicants, now known as CDOs, which stands for Socially and Economically Disadvantaged Owners. And we do have a tutorial included on the new acronyms and the new rule. But what we want to accomplish today is to help familiarize those of you who have already been certified for a little while or a long while with some of the differences you're going to see. And for those of you who are new, get you onboarded in the correct way, understanding the forms and requirements. We also want to leave a good amount of time for individualized questions. So please, as Rebecca mentioned, put your questions in the Q&A so we can track them. So you don't need to be interrupted by raising your hands or wondering what's going on. You can ask us at the end. So with no further ado, I'm going to dive right in to slide 1, which will highlight what's new in the new rule.
So we'll go into our first question, which I know we've gotten a lot, is can you explain the changes in how personal net worth is calculated, including changes in calculating for married firm owners?
Okay, this is certainly on everyone's mind. The most important change is probably the increase in the cap. It's gone up now to 2.047 million per owner. So if you have 2 or 3 or more owners per owner. One of the other big changes is we used to always include your retirement assets. That is no longer included in the calculation, which is really very logical since by definition, you're saving them for retirement. They're not available to you now to increase either your personal standard of living or to invest in your business. So that is no longer counted. And that's the case for everyone who comprises the 51% or majority CEDO ownership of the firm. Important to realize that for the other 49%, we may inquire as to who's the key personnel within your firm, what are their functions, just so that we understand your business structure and capabilities, but you are not required to provide all this information for the other 49%. However, even if 1% of the eligible ownership is applying, we need that information for all the applicants. One question we get a lot is the difference in how marital assets are counted. As Arizona has always been, at least in terms of the certification program, it's been a community property state. So the assumption has been that whatever marital assets are reported to us, you divide it in half, so 50% per spouse, unless a prenuptial or other form of legal arrangement is documented on file, and then we know that we can disregard a certain percentage. Technically, it's usually 50% in the case of married applicant. It used to be a little more difficult for us to analyze because the rule was hard and fast. If it's a married applicant, it's 50-50 absent documentation. How that affected people at times of submitting the personal net worth and the initial evaluation for eligibility had to do with capital contributions or the original startup funds. If the presumption is that it's 50-50, it was somewhat more difficult for a married applicant to establish the 51% ownership. That rule has been somewhat relaxed or allowed to give broader interpretive abilities to us as certifiers to look at the whole picture. We'll come back to that in other aspects of eligibility in future slides when we're talking about ownership and control and other factors that we consider. The important thing I want to communicate to everyone about personal net worth, it's one factor. Yes, there is a cap. However, the best approach I always advise prospective CEDOs to take, follow the guidance on the personal net worth statement. It will ask you to fill in the blanks. If you feel a particular line does not apply to you, please enter 0 or NA. That way, when we're reviewing, we know it wasn't accidentally skipped, that you actually intended to show us that that line does not apply to you. If at the time of submitting your application, a certifier has any additional questions, we will, of course, contact you. Our requirement to do that is in the regulation and it's been strengthened. You may start to hear the phrase curative measures. What that means is if you submit the application and based on the information there, something doesn't look like you're going to be eligible, or something looks like it might be an obstacle to your being found eligible, we will engage you in an interactive process, either by email or via phone, to clarify, to make sure that you understand why we're asking what we're asking, and also to make sure that we understand what you meant to tell us on your personal net worth statement. We as certifiers read many of these, but we understand our applicants probably are only doing. So our role as certifiers is to assist you to answer any questions or misunderstandings, clear up any confusion. The marital assets is still a factor, but it's one factor of many. So don't feel that there's any particular factor that's going to be a stopper to your application. You're always welcome to contact us with questions. My best advice, answer the questions completely and honestly and truthfully. And if there's any confusion, we will in fact contact you and straighten it. Our goal is to help you get certified. So, and not to stop you unnecessarily. Regarding the PNW cap, and I will start speaking in initials because this rule is full of them. So PNW, personal net worth. It used to be that they would have to enact a whole new regulation to change the personal net worth cap. Very difficult to sort of keep up with inflation and other changes that will affect the market. So what they've done now is written into the regulation that they can adjust it at regular intervals. It's based on data drawn from the Federal Reserve, lots of technicalities as to how they do it, but it has to do with the general personal net worth of business owners, both certified and non-certified, to give a more realistic picture of what a fair personal net worth cap should be. Our understanding is that while they may increase it to go along with the economic forecast, they don't intend on decreasing it. So they are committing to the DBE community that they will not be in a position if they were eligible last year, but now we changed the number, so you're not eligible anymore. That will not be the situation going forward. To continue on the next slide, there are a few more eligibility criteria we want to highlight for you.
Yes. Which actually brings me to my next question is, are there any changes in the eligibility criteria around ownership and control of a firm when evaluating their eligibility as a DBE applicant?
Yes, there are. And if we move ahead to slide 2, I'll give you some detail of, are we in there? Okay, thank you. The ownership rules have basically been clarified. As I touched on, the initial investment, or what you may have heard of as capital contributions, the emphasis on that has been changed a little bit to sort of go along with reality. I mean, a lot of times a married applicant or CDO will have started their firm in part with capital contribution. That used to be considered a highly significant predictor of eligibility. Now it's still a factor. We will ask about it. You will all find on your initial applications, or may recall from your initial applications, being asked, where did the initial funds come from? Sometimes being asked to supply canceled checks or a bank statement to confirm it, loan documents. If it was a gift, explain the nature of the gift. If it was inheritance, ask for explanation. Those things may still, in many cases, documentation is available and required and reasonable, we will still require that of you. But the initial investment is looked at as all of that: purchases, gift, inheritance, equipment you may have owned before you started your own company, and additional investments. So let's say you start your business on a shoestring, as many do. You rent your space, you get your equipment one way or another, either purchase or buying. What initial money put in as they became available? So you may have started with one truck, and as you earned enough to support the purchase of an additional. So we're looking at all of those investments that really sort of got the firm up and running. There is no reason to delay applying. In other words, there's no prohibition against a newly initiated or organized firm from applying. In that case, we will need to know, you got your license, what was that fee? Insurance, other aspects that pretty much every business needs to somehow fund to get started. It may be $100, it may be thousands of dollars, but that information really helps us understand your capacity, your capability, and along with the ownership rules, initial applications, along with the clarification of the ownership rules, we're also asking for a new piece with your application. It's called a personal narrative, or PN. In the personal narrative, we're really looking for a paragraph or no more than a page. I mean, not a lengthy document, but a statement of why and how did you start your business? What's your goal? What's your scope of work? Just a little, a narrative overview of what you are, how you got to where you are, and where you're planning on taking your company. Things that as certifiers and for prime contractors would be very helpful to know. This will go into part of how we determine the correct NAICS codes and other things that will be very important to you as you grow in the government contracting world. In terms of control requirements, the CEDO must, and this is in the regulation, quotation marks, run the show. This is different. We need to be able to establish that the CEDO or CEDOs, who comprise the 51% ownership, actually run the show. In the previous iteration of this rule, this required very specific things, such as being the highest office holder, being the qualified party on your ROC license, being the licensed engineer or registered architect. Those things are still significant, and we will definitely want to know them, but they're not the stoppers they used to be. Because as the marketplace has changed, the USDOT recognized there are different ways to maintain control. You don't necessarily have to be the license holder in every scope of work that your firm performs. But as certifiers and down the road as prime contractors looking to hire you, we do need to know how we know about the business continuity. Who's running the show, who's signing the contracts, who's empowered to resolve any disputes or misunderstandings, who's really taking care of business, bottom line. So the control requirements have been amended somewhat to require less specifics, but I do want to emphasize that for both ownership and control, we do have to be able to establish that 51% ownership and control by eligible CEDO or CEDOs. The business size cap, I wanted to add that in here. Most of you have already heard about this, but we have switched over to an analysis of the 5-year average gross receipts, and the cap has been raised to 30.4 overall. That will vary by your NAICS code. Some scopes of work, for example, an accounting office or a graphic design office, where the capital requirements and equipment requirements may be less costly, we might be looking at a lower gross cap, 9 or 12 million, and I'm just throwing out numbers off the top of my head. For a more equipment heavy type firm, such as say concrete, there's going to be a lot more outlay of expenses, and it's a lot more expensive to maintain that business. Your vehicles and supplies and other things, labor, those would have a higher cap. But overall, whatever the scope of work is, even if the NAICS system says the cap for that scope to be considered a small business is say 33 million, the cap for the program overall is 30.47. There is a difference for ACDBE or FAA-funded DBE contracts. An ACDBE being a concession, a DBE being a certified firm performing other types of contracts, not necessarily a concession, but FAA funded. Don't want to get too much in the weeds, so if you have specific questions about that, please put them in the Q&A for the Q&A portion of this presentation. The important thing is the cap is higher for ACDBEs. It's 56.42 million. Again, it has to do with the initial investment and ongoing expenses to maintain your status. I think that pretty much covers the control and ownership. Let's move on to, we are on the next slide. Thank you, Alexa. I'm looking back and forth between my own desktop and this one, so I'm a little bit behind you. To continue with independence, this used to be also a much more significant and heavily weighted issue in the previous rule. By independence, what we need to establish when we're certifying you is that your firm is capable of being viable independently or not dependent on any other firm. For example, what this is designed to prevent is a possible scenario where, say, a prime contractor might spin off their own resources and employees and create a small firm that isn't really independent. It's really more like a subsidiary or an adjunct or a division of a large corporation that would not otherwise be eligible. We want to make sure that the business owner that's applying to us is independent, not a situation where they're answerable to another firm or another firm owner. It used to be more difficult to make that distinction. There are firms, by the nature of their business, they may only deal with one or two large prime contractors or manufacturer reps or other types of firms that would not be eligible on their own. They're also not serving the same function as the DBE that's applying. It has now given us as certifiers and CDOs as people applying for certification more flexibility in understanding what are the specifics of your business, and given us more opportunities to kind of tease out any of those things that would have previously been considered factors that would compromise your independence, and to understand why that's really not the case. It's simply the way business is done in that scope of work. And again, specific concerns and questions about that we will address in the Q&A if anyone has an interest or need to know. Another area in terms of control and independence has to do with the relationship amongst family members, family-owned businesses, where some members may qualify as eligible CDOs by basis of gender or ethnic group membership. Some members may not. So we need to take a look at the whole picture. Again, going back to that question of who's running the show. So it used to be a lot more difficult for us to be able to clearly establish those lines between the eligible and non-eligible family members. They've given us more flexibility, which is designed to benefit the CDOs and DBEs out there, so that we can look at your individual circumstances of your firm and understand who's really running the show, whether or not there are other family members, spouses, children, parents who may still be involved in the firm or have never been removed from being involved in the firm, to understand the roles of everyone and to be able to, reflect accurately that the eligible CDO does run the show. Another area of control that has been simplified, it's not a frequent occurrence, but as most of you know, there are eligible groups identified in the regulation. So it's basically 7 eligible groups, women and a certain number of ethnic minorities that are specifically identified. Not every ethnic minority, and not other groups who might be eligible as someone who has suffered economic or social disadvantage, but wasn't in one of those groups. It's always been possible to make what's called an individual determination. It was under a section called Appendix E. There wasn't really any guidance for us as certifiers, and no guidance whatsoever for someone applying. So it's kind of difficult to make that determination that someone who has what we refer to as non-presumptive eligibility, so someone outside of those groups who nonetheless should be able to participate in the program. That has all been changed, so it's easier for us and for an applicant to say, what is my personal narrative? You're going to submit a personal narrative statement, and you're going to identify, and here's another acronym, you're going to identify what is the ODF, or objective distinguishing feature, that has caused you to suffer a disadvantage. The only requirement is it has to be something you've suffered here in the United States. So all of these rules do apply to citizens or legal residents. If whatever discrimination you suffered was in another country before you were a legal resident or a citizen, it's not going to be applicable to this program. What it does do is open up the door to a lot of people that there really was no way to qualify them before, although there should have been. And again, I'd be happy to take more questions on that in the next section, in the Q&A portion of this presentation.
Perfect. And then a question that I've certainly received a lot, and I know that there has been a few changes. Would you be able to take a deeper dive into interstate certification and the new processes under this rule?
Yes, I will. I will go ahead with that. One more aspect of the new eligibility process is on-site interviews have changed. The requirement is that it has to be audio recorded. Whether it's live or virtual, we are now required to record that and to have that maintained as part of your certification record. Generally, an on-site interview is only conducted for a new application. However, there are situations in which the nature of a firm may change, rapid expansion, different ownership, new location, completely different scope that you are adding. We will sometimes just because one hasn't been done in 10 years and it seems like things may have changed, your certifier may redo an on-site. The big thing that you will notice if you are applying is it's now recorded. We will share a copy of that audio recording with any applicant who would like to have a copy for their records. I think at this point, I would like to ask Reina Valenzuela, our specialist, to come on board and take it from here on the interstate certification process. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Reina. Thanks. Oh, and if you're still muted, remember to unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry about that. I was unable to unmute. Thank you, Diane, for that. I'll go ahead and jump to the next slide.
Yeah, would you be able to take a deeper dive into the interstate certification and if there's any new processes that were updated under the new rule?
Yes, okay, for the interstate certification, it's been simplified. There is a 10-day deadline once the application has been accepted. So the paperwork has been reduced. We do only require 3 things for the interstate. One is the declaration of eligibility, which used to be affidavit. We require a snippet or a photograph of where your home state, which is now jurisdiction of original certification, that you're currently certified. So if, for example, you're in Florida, we need a snippet or a photo showing that you're currently certified with that UCP. And lastly is the DOE again. So we have the DOE, excuse me, it's not the DOE, it's we need a interstate, we need your tax receipt, whether you have the full taxes. If not, you could just provide the first page and that should be good for our gross receipts. And then as far as the annual update is now called declaration of eligibility, as I stated. It used to be that you have to sign, you had to sign the notarized. Now it's not, it does not need to be notarized. And again, we need proof of gross receipts. Can be complex tax return or audited, signed by CPA, financial statement, or page 1 of the business tax return showing gross receipts. Next, please.
All right. And then just one quick question. Do the firms that are currently certified with ADOT, do they need to take any action under this new rule?
No, basically, since we're currently in the process of updating all the forms, all you have to do is once your annual update is due, we do send out 3 notices. And then if we don't hear back from you, and everything's done through our internal portal. So you'll receive 3 notices. And then once we don't hear from you, we'll go ahead and send a Q&A saying, by the way, your annual update was due, or declaration of eligibility is due. Please submit the required documents and we'll specify. We'll give you 2 notifications under the Q&A showing that this is due by, we usually give a week from each other. So our last resource is calling the firm and saying, by the way, we haven't received your declaration of eligibility, please submit. And so we do attempt to call. Our last resource is calling you and making sure you submit it, whether you want to continue to be certified.
Perfect. And then a follow-up question. Have there been changes affecting decertification or suspensions of DBE certification? And is the new process the same for interstate and in-state DBEs?
Okay, let me start off with another acronym that is new, and that's the home state. We used to call home state. It is not called their jurisdiction of original certification, JOC. So the date your annual declaration of eligibility is due in all states will be the date your firm was first certified in your JOC. So this is very new to all of us certifiers. What we're doing is our last resource is to contact you, but first we'd like to research and see if we could find the date of your original certification with your home state. If we do not, if we cannot find that actual date, we'll contact the JOC, and then our last resource is sending you a Q&A and saying, by the way, we just want to know your jurisdiction of original certification date. If any state in which you're certified plans to remove your certification, that state must notify the UCP in all states the firm is certified in. So this is also new. Other states do not have to concur, but they can comment or provide additional information. So as a certifier, we have 10 days to concur or non-concur. So this is new to all of us. And then if the decertification moves ahead and the firm's certification is removed, it will be removed in all states unless the removal was for failure to cooperate, FTC. So in order to answer your question, yes, there has been changes affecting decertification or suspensions of DBE certification. There's two types of suspensions. There's the mandatory, and then there's the elective. So we do have two types of suspensions. For decertification, an example that Diane gave, if your firm exceeds the size standard cap, we do go ahead and do a decertification and send you a notice of intent, NOI. And there is a lengthy process for that. So if you have any questions in regards to that, we'll be free to answer any question you have under the Q&A. And again, here, our next slide is summary suspension of certification mean post for failure to comply prior to decertification. So anything else besides the failure to comply, we'll send a decertification. As I stated before, B2G Now or DOORS is being updated. Hopefully by the end of the month, we should have all the forms in the system, if not already in the system. So all the new applications and declaration of eligibilities will be processed in compliance with the new rule. And the last thing that's new is that ACU tracks will display websites for DBE certified firms, which we didn't have previously. And this is now a requirement as part of the DBE directory in all jurisdictions.
And then I know that there are a ton of acronyms. Would you be able to explain maybe some terms that are going away that maybe people no longer need to remember, or they're being replaced with another?
Yes, as stated, JOC, jurisdiction of original certification, used to be home state. The notice of intent, it used to be notice of decertification. The CEDO is also new, socially and economically disadvantaged individual or owner. As Diane stated, that is new. And the summary suspension notice is also notice of decertification or notice of intent. So the other new acronym is the Uniform Certification Application, UCA is another one. And so here we have resources for you. If you have any time, you could go ahead and download the links that are here in this presentation. We will be sending you out the presentation, so no need to take notes on this. There's links, and so we'll be providing the links with this. A lot of good information, a lot of new, as we stated, acronyms. And if you ever have any doubts, you know, here's the ECFR. And lastly, here are the USDOT QR codes. You could go ahead and scan them for any of this 5 different types of information, whether it's training, you could read a PDF of the final rule, or any DBE and ACDBE final rules information. A lot of great information for you to read at your leisure.
Perfect. And then with that, I will stop sharing. And we will open it up now to kind of Q&A, or if you guys brought any questions that you would like answered, now is the best time. So I know I see one in the Q&A, and this can go for either Diane or Raina. How would this affect a subseries under an umbrella company?
I can take that one. This is another change in how we as certifiers look at what the regulation refers to as indirect ownership. It is similar in the sense that we always did have to look at this as a factor, but to me this is much more clear. What it does say is it provides for what's called a look-through. So if an affiliate or subsidiary firm is owned 51% and controlled by qualifying parties, in other words, eligible CEDOs, they are eligible for certification as long as they maintain the control. There's one level of operation. So an affiliate of one company, yes. So the father or parent company. However, if the ownership chain goes further than that and say there's a grandparent company, that would most likely not be eligible, except in very unusual circumstances. For example, ownership is CEDO at all 3 levels. We could look at that. But generally what we're looking at certifying here is clear ownership and control by a CEDO, and it gets a little murkier the more levels up you go. So the program has sort of cut that off. I'm going to give you the citation. It's in section 26.63, talks about general certification rules. It gives several examples. Again, if someone has a very specific question about a company you are involved in, feel free to give us a call or shoot us an email, and we can respond to that. I see another question on the same topic. Would you require the same docs for the umbrella company? I'm assuming by umbrella, you mean that next level of parent ownership. I don't know that I could give a blanket answer. It might really depend on the specifics of your company. So in that situation, both to protect your confidentiality and to protect the integrity of the information I give you, I would really recommend a one-to-one call. Give me a call, shoot me an email, and we can have a conversation about the specific situation that you need more information about.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions? You want to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A?
Alexa, if I may, I want to add one thing to Raina's discussion of the summary suspension. As she mentioned, as Raina mentioned, there are 2 types of summary suspension. This has always been the case, but they've really elaborated on the usage. The first type is a mandatory suspension, which is kind of rare. What it means is if we are aware that the company is under legal sanctions of some kind for fraud or other criminal activity related to their DBE certification, we are required then to suspend their certification. Personally, have never encountered it, but it's in there. The one I have encountered is if for any reason a firm has been suspended and the USDOT is involved, they will tell all of the JOC and all other states where the firm is certified, this firm must be immediately suspended. And when the federal government is involved and gives that order, all states will be required to follow it. Again, also rare, but that's the mandatory. A much more common is the elective suspension. And as Raina referenced, this may very well be a strategy many states will utilize for failure to cooperate with your DOE requirement. Many of you may have received what is now called the NOI, or Notice of Intent, warning you that, we've tried to get you to submit on these dates we emailed you, and on this date we called you. If we don't receive your DOE packet by whatever date we give you, generally a week to 2 weeks, we will decertify your firm. Instead of doing all of that and going down that path of certification, which requires a lot more work, both for us and for the DBE to get out of that situation, the summary suspension will take effect immediately. So your certification is temporarily suspended. It's not an actual decertification, but you will, until you get your DOE submitted back in good standing, your certification will be suspended, which could affect bidding and other aspects of business that are using DBE. If the summary suspension is still not responded to within a certain time, and I'd have to check the new regulation to be sure it's either 6 months or 12 months, we would then have to go ahead and issue a formal removal. So you may start seeing notices of suspension from either Arizona or other states where you're certified, just to be clear on what that requirement now is for you. It really means we've made so many efforts to get your DOE. Let us know. The reason why there's a difference in the notification requirements amongst certifiers, sometimes the firm no longer chooses to be certified in a particular state. You may have applied in, say, California in anticipation of a contract you wanted to bid on. Didn't happen. You don't foresee going after business in that state. So sometimes applicants or CDOs let their certification lapse by not responding to the DOE. It just creates a little more work for us and more nasty grams to let you know that we're still looking for your DOE. We really appreciate if CDOs just let us know. If you're no longer interested, you're welcome to withdraw your certification at any time. And if CDO chooses to do that, you're also welcome to reply at any time. So just to let you know some of the fine points of not responding to a DOE because you don't want to be certified anymore in that state, much simpler is just shoot a quick email and let that state know. So just wanted to add that.
Love that. And we do have a few questions. So one is from Victoria. She's asking, when will these new rules take effect? If you are a new business that offers services, is it required to have insurance to qualify? If you have not yet secured a contract, can one still apply? And did you say this presentation will be available and when? I can answer the presentation part. Yes, it will be available. We'll send out an email either today or tomorrow morning, and then that will include the link and this presentation as well.
Okay, I can respond to Victoria's question. These new rules did take effect as of May 9th. How quickly we forget. I had to think for a minute which month.
May 9th.
Excuse me? Oh, I thought someone else was adding a comment. And that question has vanished from my view, so I don't know the rest. I think Raina mentioned that the new forms are being uploaded, that our software provider is updating the application form and other things. So be patient with us. They have to be redone in all 50 states. So it's taking a little bit of time. However, you will only be held to the new requirements. For example, if you're submitting your annual DOE, you can use the affidavit that's in the application packet in the portal when you log in. You just don't need to get notarized anymore. Just sign it, and that meets the requirements. Same with tax return. We certainly still appreciate receiving, and we'll happily accept a complete tax return, but as long as we can verify your gross receipts. So it would be either the front page where it's listed if you file a business return, your Schedule C if you're filing on a personal return, or if you haven't filed yet, a letter from your CPA verifying what your annual gross receipts were for the previous tax year. So we're a little more flexible in what we can accept.
And then I know they were asking, since they're a new business that offers services, are they required to have insurance to qualify? I'm assuming for DBE certification, if they have not yet secured a contract, can one still apply for DBE certification?
Insurance is not a requirement for DBE certification. That would really be spoken more, I believe, on the DBE compliance. And so what those requirements might be, I don't know if Gabe has anything. Gabe DeMarbier, who's our compliance manager, is with us. Thanks, Gabe.
Hi, everyone. Great question. My understanding, if you are going to be certified, or not certified, but if you're going to apply to complete professional service contracts with our engineering consulting services firm, ECS, or engineering consulting section, I apologize, you do have to have insurance set up prior to being considered a qualified firm. That's but a better question we would want to get the ECS team involved in to respond to.
Perfect. And then we have a question from Haley. I don't know who wants to take this one, but it says, AZ is not our home state. When we log on to the AZ B2B website, will our DOE date update to show our home state DOE date, which is in March?
Excellent question. No, it will not automatically update. We are manually updating. We really appreciate CDOs letting us know what their home state, what their JOC anniversary date is, so we can update. What we're finding is very often CDOs are they know the new regulation requires the state to be the same in every state. So we are having people send us a copy. When we submit their JOC, they're automatically sending it to other states, which is awesome. We often do have it in our records from your original application. We can go back and see what was your original certification date. So what we're doing at ADOT is we're trying to find it everywhere we can with records without having to reach out to every one of our certified firms to ask specifically. We do appreciate if in your annual DOE you let us know, or at any time you can let us know, but it's not automatic. We do need to do it. So again, our cycle has traditionally been the April-October annual DOE cycle. You will be noticing changes. We're trying to automatically move out. So people who are due and submit to us in, say, June, we're going to make sure you're not going to be asked to submit again in October. Just a few months later, we're going to keep it to a annual cycle. So we're figuring it out, but we certainly appreciate any assistance we can get from our CDOs and making sure we have the correct date to input and update your records.
Perfect. And then we have a question from Renee. Does the DBE certification attach to the owner or the EIN number? They're specifically asking because they have a DBE certification for their AZ-based company, but have opened a sister company with a new EIN number in Georgia. Do they need to apply for a new DBE certification, or can they just do an interstate application?
Very detailed question. This is what makes certification interesting. Technically, so it's kind of two different questions. The first, does the DBE certification attach to the owner or the EIN? It's really both. It's the owner and the company. So if you have an Arizona-based company which is certified, the other company, whatever state you open it in, if it's the same owner but under a different EIN, that means it's a different company. Legally, it's a different entity. It's a different firm. So from an Arizona perspective, your Georgia-based company, you should report that to us on a change request to let us know this would be considered an affiliate. Or an additionally owned firm, depending on what the circumstances of your business are. In terms of Georgia, that new EIN would mean it's a new company. And it's kind of a tricky question because it all depends on what's the principal business location, lots of other factors. So it's kind of a multi-factor question. You can feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email and we can discuss the specifics so I can help you figure out what's your best course of action to pursue in this scenario.
And then we have a question from Victoria. Sorry, were you saying no longer need 3 years of personal taxes? Oh, so what? No longer need 3 years of personal taxes or just 1 year? Thank you for answering my question. So outside of working with the agency, Gabe mentioned, then I can apply without having insurance at this time. Okay, so yeah, so asking, she just wanted to clarify that she doesn't need to have insurance at this time in order to apply for certification.
Yes, I'm not sure I understand your question, Victoria, so you may want to clarify, but the part about the 3 years of personal taxes, just 1 year. So personal taxes are required at time of initial application. We'll be asking for both your personal taxes and your business taxes. Or if you file on a Schedule C and don't file a separate business tax, it would be just your personal taxes. Again, at the time of your annual DOE, we will again be looking for taxes, but for the purpose of substantiating your firm's annual gross receipts for that tax year. So in your annual DOE, if you're filing your business taxes on Schedule C of your personal return, right, we would only need that 1 year for every subsequent year. In terms of the insurance, yeah, Gabe that's his side of the street, is what's needed for actually working, excuse me, on contracts. So the insurance having insurance is not a factor in terms of certification eligibility. That does not mean it's not important to a DBE to understand those requirements. It simply means that it's not really relevant to certification. We do ask on the application if you have it and what your bonding ability is and other questions. They're really just to understand your business structure and not really as part of your eligibility determination. I hope that answers your question.
Perfect. And then we have a question from Mathis. What is the lead time for approval on an expansion application if they are already DBE certified?
Good question. So just to make sure everybody's clear on this question, an expansion application is what the system calls it when you submit, when a CEDO submits an application for an additional NAICS code. So, and you're welcome to do that at any time that you feel a NAICS code should be changed or added to your firm's certified profile. There is no specific length of time. We have internal standards that we want to see that processed within 60 days. Generally speaking, it's not a very lengthy process. The application itself will kind of walk you through what we need. So if it's a scope that would require a different license than what we currently have on file for you, for example, a different rock license, let us know that you've got that. Give us an updated resume if you've received a new certification or new training. What substantiates your ability to perform in this additional scope that you're requesting. So generally, it's relatively quick. If we do not receive the information we need at the time we get the expansion application, we'll start an interactive process. We'll either email you back with a very specific list of what we need, or we'll call you and have a conversation to try and understand what it is that you're requesting from us.
Hopefully that answers that question. And then going on to an anonymous question. Their business is in media production. Is this DBE certification something where their services would be utilized?
Well, it depends. Contracts have all kinds of what we call ancillary or support services. It's not always strictly construction. There may be advertising, graphic design, other things that are part of a contract. Important to remember, these are contracts that are funded by the USDOT, whether it's FHWA, the highways, FAA, aviation, FTA transit, it's very possible that there could be opportunity. I would always encourage potential CEDO. You can look at the contracts that have been awarded by municipalities. It's all public information. You can go to Arizona's procurement portal, take a look and see what's out there, get a better feel for it. We do have certified firms that are in that scope. Presumably, I'm not an expert on all the contracts that are awarded and how much money DBE firms are making in their scopes, but I'm going to assume that firms would not continue their certification if it wasn't relevant and profitable for firms in their scope to be certified. So I think that's probably the best general answer I can give you.
Perfect. All right. Then does anyone else have any other questions that you wanted to ask, whether in the Q&A or if you want to drop it quickly in the chat? I can look through and see if we have anything. I don't see any other questions. And as always, if there's questions that you think about after this meeting, all of our emails, our inboxes are open. So if you ever want to meet virtually or one-on-one or even just a phone call, please just reach out to any of us. We're here to support you all. And with that, I'll turn it back to Rebecca.
I'll speak up real quick while everyone's waiting, but I dropped something in the chat to encourage all firms to make sure their profiles are kept up to date in the UTRAC system. And that goes for DBE firms and non-DBE firms. As Diane stated, they utilize that contact information to reach out to you. Not to mention, that's a great tool for prime contractors to reach out to lower tier subcontractors for information. So that's another reason why you want to keep your firm profile up to date. One more reason is we utilize the UTRAC system for completing bidders list. And there have been some updates to the requirements, such as reporting the gender information and race information from majority owner, as well as NAICS codes. And we're hoping to utilize your profile to generate a lot of that information. So the more up to date your profile is, the more subcontracting opportunities you're going to have for your firm. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Thank you.
Alrighty, so we ended up a little bit early, but again, if there's no further questions, I will return this time back to you all. Again, a reminder, we will be sharing this presentation with you all. We'll be sending out emails either later today or probably tomorrow morning, so just keep an eye on your inboxes. It'll have a link to this recording, so if you weren't previously taking notes, you can always go back and rewatch it. And then again, the slides, they have embedded links, so feel free when you're going through the presentation, you can click and it'll take you directly to the sites. So you can save them, bookmark them. And again, we're all here to support you with all the different changes that are happening. So please, please, please send us an email. It's definitely not a bother at all. And with that, that is all. Thank you all so much for participating and attending. And I hope this was helpful to you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.